Wah, 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 wah. Sorry, my sisters dared me to start my presentation with this video by making my vocal stem, duck noises. So yeah, let's start it. Lumi the anteater here, and today I will make not a serious presentation. Just instead of a professional presentation, it will be me presenting stuff I learned from the book The Insects, an outline of entomology, third edition, that I bought from eBay for like $10, which is super worth it. I've enjoyed the first chapter so far, and I plan to go through it in its entirety. Okay, so the importance of insects. Lumi the anteater. Okay, so entomology. Entomology, it means is the study of insects, and entomologists study, observe, collect, rear, and experiment with insects. Yeah, and research includes evolution, ecology, behavior, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and genetics. And that's just general biology research, but for entomologists, they focus on the organisms known as insects. Modern entomology started in the early 18th century for multiple reasons. It happens with a combination of rediscovery of the classical literature, the spread of rationalism, and availability of ground glass optics made for the study of insects acceptable for the thoughtful, privately wealthy, but not only the privately wealthy. Also, people like hobbyists insect studying was suitable for hobbyists. And for example, like Charles Darwin's initial enthusiasm in natural history was as a collector of beetles. So yeah, and going to the importance of insects, they have many important aspects, but like five of them are the major ones. First, natural recycling, which means like leaf litter, wood degradation, dispersal of fungi, disposal of carrion dung, and soil turnover. Plant propagation by pollination and seed dispersal. That alone, like the total volume of pollination services rendered by all insects globally, has been estimated to be like around excess of 100 billion annually, and this is from a study from 2003. So yeah. And another importance is maintenance for plant community composition and structure. Like via phytophagy and including seed feeding. Also, their insects are important for as a food for insectivorous vertebrates, and that for many birds, mammals, reptiles, and fish, and maintenance of animal community structures via transmission of diseases of large animals and predation and parasitism of smaller ones. So yeah, that's why the insects are important. Okay, now we're talking about biodiversity. There are 5 major orders standard for their high species richness. The beetles, which people say they comprise of almost 40% of described insects. They have more than 350,000 species. And wasps, ants, and bees, they have like nearly 250,000 described species. And both flies and butterflies and moths have between 125,000 and 150,000 species. And true bugs comprise approaching 95,000 described species. So yeah, insects are very diverse, and there are reasons for that biodiversity, including the small size of insects. And the small size of insects is a limitation imposed by their methods of gas exchange via the trachea, and this is an important determinant. There are a lot more niches exist in given environment for small organisms than large organisms. Like example, a single acacia acacia tree that provides one meal to a giraffe can support the complete life cycle of dozens of insect species. So yeah, and not just small size. Another another reason also for biodiversity is our response to environmental change, which we can say is genetic change between generations, like the high genetic elasticity within insects to persist and cope with altered conditions. And another one is, which ties to this, is sexual selection, which is like all the male to male competition and the sexual pheromones and all of that. And there are and now we talk about insects in popular culture and commerce. In popular culture, we know like people have been using beetles. Like I will bring up one example, which is the importance of scarab beetles. We all know that how important scarab beetles to the Egyptians as a religious items, but even earlier shamanistic cultures elsewhere made ornaments that represent scarabs and other beetles, including jewel beetles. In Old Egypt, the scarab, which shapes dung into balls, is identified as a potter. Small, similar insect symbolism extends also farther east. Egyptians and subsequently the Greeks made ornamental scarabs from many materials, including lapis lazuli, basalt, limestone, and turquoise, and ivory and resins, and even valuable gold and silver. So yeah, that's another aspect of insects in popular culture is butterfly farms and insect zoos. Uh, like like butterflies and insects are very popular. Like millions of people visit them, and such attractions extend throughout the world. Natural occurrences of certain insects and attract ecotourism, including aggregations of overwintering monarch butterflies in coastal central California and Mexico, and the famous glowworm caves of Waitomo, New Zealand. And final thing here is insect collecting. Yeah, as we said before, even though like people are antipathic, like no, doesn't have empathy towards insects, because they're commonly like we see them in our house, and like we find them as a pest and disgusting. So that also helps with research, because people can research with insects, because people don't care for the ethical, for the ethics of experimenting with insects, like compared to experimenting with mammals. So yeah, but also there are people who like collect insects. Like even in Japan, there are like automatic vending machines. Adults collect too. Like in Japan, there are popular rhinoceros beetles. They sell for like $3 to $7 each, and some stag beetles sell for $10. So yeah, insects as food. Entomophagy as human food first. We talk about it as food first, and here's a table for nutrients for some of the insects that are eaten in the world. Like for example, let's start with reproductive individuals of a termite, which are de-winged and fried in palm oil. The large caterpillar of two species of moth, these two, and the larva of palm weevil. Especially the mature larva of this palm weevil. Often these are also called often palm worms. Provide one of the richest sources of animal fat with substantial amounts of riboflavin, thiamine, and zinc and iron. So yeah, they're very nutritious. And now we talk about insects as food for domesticated animals as a feed, and like like it's more acceptable, of course, to feed than eating it, but discuss towards eating insects is more cultural and less rational or scientific. But people don't care about feeding them to domesticated animals. For the nutritive significance of insects as feed for fish and poultry, pigs, farm-grown mink is recognized in China, where feeding trials have shown that insect-driven derived diets can be cost-effective alternative to more conventional fish meal diets. The main feeds insect feeds from insects are the silkworms, the larvae and houseflies, and larvae of mealworms. And for silkworms, they are byproducts of making silk. So instead of wasting them, you can use them as feeds. So that's helpful. And for finally, I'm gonna talk about insect conservation. And yeah, there are insect conservation, there are flagship species, which mean these are like the single species that are used as a flagship to spread awareness of insect conservation, and that includes monarch butterfly, El Segundo blue, Queen Alexandra's birdwing. These are butterflies, all of them, and we're using them as example for flagship species because butterflies are important, and people love to see butterflies, so that's why they are flagship species. And by the conservation of flagship species, there's gonna be an umbrella effect that also conserves other bugs and insects in the habitat of these flagship species. So yeah, okay. So let's talk about the monarch butterfly. The monarch butterfly is a migratory species, and it requires special conservation. Monarchs from east of the Rockies overwinter in Mexico and migrate northwards as far as Canada throughout the summer. Critical to the conservation of these monarchs is the safeguarding of the overwintering habitat at Sierra Chincoa in Mexico. A most significant insect conservation measure implemented in recent years is the decision of Mexican government to support the monarch butterfly biosphere reserve established to protect the phenomenon. Although the monarch butterfly is an excellent flagship insect, there are other butterflies also in California desert, which is El Segundo blue, whose principal colony in sand dunes near Los Angeles Airport was threatened by urban sprawl and golf course development. Protracted negotiations with many interests resulted in designation of 80 hectares as a reserve. And another butterfly that's important is the Queen Alexandra's birdwing, which is the largest butterfly in the world, and it's in Papua New Guinea. So yeah, and that's it. Thank you for watching, everyone. Bye.